The problem is, if you see the film, which is for your eyes only, it looks like Bond 1. But you're a sophisticated audience. I mean, you can get it. That was just a script, okay? I mean, what really happened was, it was a movie after Thunderball, which didn't go down too well. And the producers decided that they wanted everything in that film to be realistic, so they employed real subs. Anyway, so I got to be on the set with a real sub, opposed to Commander Bond in a fake sub, and we had the same problem with engineers that I think we might have here. And you see, they felt that their submarine was properly engineered, and I said that the thing was they wanted me to attack it with an outreached manipulator as if I was going to smash through the front of it. But of course, I wasn't supposed to kill Bond, I was supposed to glance off. The problem was, I said, look, I'm an engineer, I've got a real tough little sub here, that's a prop, I'm going to go straight through the front of that thing, destroy your prop, and kill Bond. And that got them rather upset because they felt that this was properly engineered and I didn't know what I was talking about. So I was given instructions, and in my mind, I was given the license to kill Bond because, see, they had offended the idea that I was an engineer. So, I mean, I could have pulled back on the throttle and I could have hit at an angle where, as an engineer, I would know it would glance off. But, you know, I mean, I did what I was told, which was to make it look realistic. So I gunned the thing, hit it square on, smashed right through the front of the very expensive prop. And the point was, it wasn't amusing after that because strapped into his seat was Commander Bond. And this big manipulator was coming straight for his guts. And, well, if you know the Gary Larson, he had a wonderful thing that expressed it. He had two panthers on the branch of a tree overlooking a trail with a very dorky-looking explorer walking along. And these panthers are about to pounce down, and one says to the other one, now remember, just before you leap, growl. These things have the greatest expressions. So if you've ever been eyeball to eyeball with a human being where this man thinks he's about to die at your hand, it's really interesting. And they really do have the greatest expressions. Now, it was a classic moment in film history, but it didn't follow the script. Anyway. I didn't know whether to defend that or all of the ideas about engineers that came before. I think NASA engineers are not like, well, there's engineers and there's engineers, okay? This is Deep Flight 1. Wow. This made the first transition from underwater ballooning. Conventional submersibles are heavy. They take on water. They sink. People sit in silly things like chairs and look out through little portholes. They sink down. They're essentially underwater ballooning. And to get to the next level, we had to transition to underwater flight. And this is like the Bell X-1. This is the proof of concept is Deep Flight. It's a very personal machine. It was built for me. It only fits me. I'm the only one that's ever been in the thing. We're able to take a huge number of shortcuts. It wasn't funded by the government. It was funded. The front nose actually was a beautiful 1967 Jaguar of mine that got sold off and paid for the front nose. The main body was built. Main body was built by 20 volunteers, mostly medical students. We worked. It was just an incredible. It's a grassroots project, and you might get some sense of balance here between this and NASA, because this is the cutting edge of technology. And think about it, it's a garage project. Think about that. It's a garage project, and it's the cutting edge of technology. I'll get back to that. Let me just whip through these. If you can imagine how much fun this is. This is flying through inner space. And this was one project done with National Geographic. There are no slides to show it. But if you see one of those reruns, there was the most extraordinary encounter between this machine and a giant manta ray with twice the wingspan. And this animal became interested. It took 4 hours. But we would move together, completely under control of the animal. The animal would let us get close, like to here, and then the animal would turn 180, move away. I'd be fumbling because we just didn't have too much control at those slow speeds, trying to turn around. I'd be turning around, worried about this animal moving away because our visual space, I was just about to lose it, but I guess their eyesight's similar to ours, and at the point of lost contact, the animal would turn and come back, and we would have another closing. And each time, we closed about 2 or 3 feet closer. The end result of that, of course, the photographer wasn't in the water. He was out changing his film. The end result of that was that I kept my course and heading, as you do. You know, with boats, it's all I kind of knew what to do was if I keep steady, the animal is going to control this thing. So I maintained constant speed and thrust straight. The animal came straight at me, and I thought, oh my God, we are going to collide. That probably isn't good. I didn't know what was in the animal's mind. I hit reverse thrust. This machine stopped, backed up in the water, and I was stationary, and that animal brushed right over my top. I was going nuts inside this thing. I was going, oh my God, oh wow, that's incredible. And of course, there's no cameras rolling. It really didn't matter. It was a private moment, and this animal just thundered overhead. Yeah, just I think brushing the acrylic. It's, you know, the gills, the intakes, and then that big wide underbelly, and then ended by this long tail that glided off. Huh. If you wonder why we do this, I just told you. Either you get it or you don't. I mean, I can't help you if you don't. This is that same machine, just leaping out the water for the hell of it. It turns out that you understand some of these mammal behaviors. I'd be leaping out the water. It looks like for the hell of it. I did it for the first time for the hell of it. Then I realized if I looked right, I could see the chase boat. And so we would end up going along, and I developed this porpoise maneuver, and everyone in the chase boat would say, Graham, that was wonderful. You look just like a porpoise. And I'm saying, nuts to that. That had a real utility. I could pop up, check on where you were, make sure you weren't going to run over me, duck underneath my own wake without losing speed. Because if you porpoise like that, you generate a big wave that just sucks all your energy. You stop, and then you have to go. But I found there was a rhythm, and if I kept to this rhythm, I didn't lose any speed. It was efficient. You come up, duck underneath your own bow wave, come up, duck underneath your own bow wave. And I just learned that, and really what you're doing is you're learning to behave like a mammal, because what you really have is you build a machine which is the external version of a dolphin or whale, but it's you inside, and you end up developing the same behaviors. If I wanted to know what Karen was, I'd just leap out the water like that and take a look around. That was the beginning of flight. That's a little out of focus. But something rather extraordinary happened. We then built a machine which was a wet sub. This was a thoroughly lethal machine because in this one, you're exposed to pressure. So I never managed to fly this without hurting my ears because you always saw a canyon. You just had to just dive through and just roar through the edges of the canyon and come up yee-haw and then go, oh, no, I did it again. But the point was that we were working with some semi-wild dolphins who thought this was really cool. And I've been underwater with dolphins, but when you run in company with these animals, you realize you've only ever seen them stationary, idling around you. When you move at their speed, you look at their muscle tone, you look at the way they're working, you look at the sense of purpose. And it gives you, you just know you're seeing something brand new for the first time. So the ability to move fast in the water is pretty important. This was an IMAX project. That's that same thing leaping out of the water. That's just a taste. This is where I'm going to end up. This is the machine that we've ended up with. It's called the Aviator. But I want to give you a big picture because it's going to be a little bit in conflict with a lot of what you've heard. And if there was the Inquisition still existing, I'd probably be carted off immediately after that. But I'm not sure they still exist. I mean, I think they don't. But even if they do, the great thing is there's a lot of people around here who are higher on the list than I am. So thank you very much. Okay, if you remember one thing, well, two things. Remember I killed Bond, but if you just, this is a progression, okay? Aristotle, this is a big idea. Aristotle, Galileo, Hawks. Can you remember that? Look, it's an idea. And I'm serious about this. Because when it turns out, when you understand how big the ocean is, 94% of life on Earth is in the oceans, by the way. And let me just start stretching your mind, because I've only got a few minutes to do this. You've heard people pay lip service to the oceans because it's 70% of the Earth's surface. That ignores, that deliberately is misleading. That assumes that the ratio of the areas is what really matters. Our habitat is a thin film existence on the top 1/3 of the planet that extends through this planet's primary atmosphere. We have a thin film habitat on 1/3 the surface area of the planet. 2/3 the surface area of the planet covered by water, yes, but it's a three-dimensional space. It's this planet's primary habitat. The real numbers you should be looking at are that terrestrial organisms, we are a small minority with 6% of this planet. 94% of this planet is aquatic. Think what that does to the idea that we are masters of this planet that was built for us. It really doesn't jibe if we're such a small minority. And I want to suggest that it's a progression of, it shows the tug between science and knowledge, if you want, and a weakness of the human mind that has to put ourselves at the center of everything. So, you go back to pre-Aristotle, and you have a flat Earth, and we're in the middle of everything. Then there's a fight, and it turns out that we live on a spherical Earth. But the Earth is the center of everything. Then there's another progression. No, the Earth revolves around the sun. And now we're in the middle of a universe, and heaven knows where we are with the Big Bang. But, I'll tell you one thing. We are the same human beings that wanted to be in the center of everything at the beginning. And we have retreated and dug in to the point where, by golly by gosh, this is our planet. We are its masters. It was built for us, period. So, if it turns out that 96% of this habitat is oceanic and we can't get there, hey, it doesn't matter. It does not count. You know, if you go deep in the ocean, and I did this as a young engineer, you go deeper than the pretty light stuff, the coral reef. You get away from the surface, you get away from air. Where you end up is this beautiful, still, tranquil place which is full of life that we don't yet understand. And it is the most peaceful, you know, it's the primary habitat on Earth. I'm not disappointed we live out in the air. I think it's fun up here. But if you want an organism-friendly environment, it's an ocean planet which is blessed to be bathed in water, which protects from solar radiation, which stabilizes temperatures, which even stabilizes light. You know, the difference between light and day, below 300 feet, 700 feet. It's a very, very stable environment. So much so that 94% of life on Earth is aquatic. And if you just want to say, okay, let's just bugs and fish, fine. You're not ready. You're not ready to face reality, which is that there are two words that are silly here, flat Earth. Flat because we're not flat. Earth because only ourselves will be silly enough to call this incredible ocean planet Earth. And I think it leads to all kinds of imbalances. One is the money spent in space exploration and in ocean exploration. And if you think that there are a lot of people exploring the planet, then explain to me how it is in a garage we can build a state-of-the-art machine in a year in this millennium. This stuff that we're doing is back where aviation was 100 years ago. We were in that museum last night. There were early aircraft, and they were built by people that invented the thing, put it together, climbed in, said the equivalent of let's roll, hit the magneto, start this thing up. Let's see if I got my sums right. I'm going to see if this thing flies. That's something that where does that happen anymore? Well, it happens here. And that tells you we're 100 years behind because it happens here. I can give you on my hands the number of people working on this stuff. There's a wonderful Russian. Karen, what's his name? I can never. The man's kissed me, by the way. Big, wet kisses. And I can't even remember his name. It's incredibly embarrassing. Anatoly Sigelevich, a wonderful guy. There's a Frenchman, Henri Deleuze, that has the most incredible ego. The man is just a wonder. And there's a Canadian who we used to be the best of friends till he felt this company had to try and sue me to stop me doing stuff. That's it. All of us are crazy enough to build machines that we climb into. And, you know, if you want about commitment from engineering, you know, if you're developing electronic software, it doesn't work, you kind of look around, hope nobody's looking at the screen, and go and fix it. If it's really bold and really goes wrong, there's a puff of smoke and a little whiff of smoke comes out, and you kind of fan that. Real engineers climb in their machines, switch them on, and go fly them. That might solve some of NASA's problems, by the way. All right, if you want to focus, boy, you just that clears up the focus pretty good. So, there's a big picture. Hey, we live on an ocean planet. If you want to be smart for your grandchildren, don't call it flat. You already know that. But quit calling it Earth. I tried to. I don't know what the name's going to be, but here's a prediction. 100 years in the future. It isn't going to happen in 10 because we're not talking about technology. You're talking about changing human nature. We're talking about introducing enough humility that we stand back at this Earth and we understand what it is. It's an ocean planet. Look at the picture that Constance just showed us from Mars. What did she say? Do you see the glistening water? It's an ocean planet, for God's sakes. It's an ocean planet. Period. Calling it Earth is stupid. So, it's an average of 4 miles deep. You think you know that place? Okay, we can go to Europa and look for dead bugs underneath the Dead Sea. We can go on our own planet and look for a 55-foot monster we've not seen, or at least we've not seen returned alive. That's the Kraken, it's a giant squid. It's for real. The idea is that because we haven't seen them when we're so smart, they must be rare. Karen and I, we've coined this thing. It's called the brass band thing. It's not a theory. But it goes like this. If we were as smart exploring the jungles as we are exploring the oceans, what we would do would take along a brass band. I don't know why. It's a dumb idea, but that's what we would do. We'd be making as much noise as we can. We'd wear old socks. We'd be as smelly as we could. We'd go crashing through the jungle, making as much noise, and then I would return from this expedition and say, well, you know, there's no tigers or lions in there. We found butterflies and bugs, and a footprint from a tiger, which must be a very, very rare animal, because we've never seen one. The last National Geographic expedition used one of my subs to go down and look for the giant squid. This is an animal. This tells you how smart we are. We're all smart in this room, right? But we're part of the human race, so you can all bear the shame. I'm serious. This animal's got a 15-inch eyeball, the same mechanics as yours and mine. Guess what he does with that eye? Guess why it's 15 inches wide? Science won't tell you because they haven't proved it. I think as an engineer, it's to see light, low-level light. So here's an animal whose dynamic range of light works way below our dynamic range. And we go looking for it in a Hawks-designed sub, which is great. That part was great. with an HD camera, high-definition camera, because that's what the broadcasters want. How cool is that? High definition of a squid. Unfortunately, the high-definition camera is designed for sunlight exposures, so we take down these beautiful arc lights, and they're very proud of that. This expedition, they were mounting these massive arc lights on here, which, if you're a giant squid, is a weapon-grade emission. It is. Giant squid also have massive, great nervous systems. They've got big bundles of nerves. Nobody knows what that's for. I'm an engineer. That tells me this guy is communicating between its extremities with some kind of sensor we don't know. It's sensing low pressure levels. It's sensing electrical fields. We know sharks, for instance, will sense electrical fields. So that's the leakage from muscle tissue. We go down there with machines which are like nuclear reactors leaking like crazy. So we go looking for the giant squid with weapon-grade lights, emitting weapon-grade noises and all kinds of emissions, and we sit there, and if you look at this film, it's pretty pathetic in the end, because the filmmaker who's a friend, so we can't poke fun at him, and we have. His name is Mike DeGree. In the end, Mike tears his hair out of these scientists and says, we're never going to find this animal like this. I'm taking the last dive. He gets in deep rover, he sits on the bottom, he turns out the lights. Great idea, Mike. I mean, what's the animal going to do? Mike. Mike. So there's Mike DeGree sitting in the dark at the bottom of the ocean, trying to find the giant squid. Hey, share the blame, okay? You're all smart. Go figure it out. I can't figure it out. Anyway, what we're doing with no funding, just our own little garage. This was one engineer to run the CAD, myself. This is the next generation on from that proof of concept called Aviator. It's an underwater flight trainer. In the front of that is Fred McLaren. He's an ex-nuclear submarine commander. He came out there and said, I want to marry this machine. Now, he's got a bit of a problem somewhere, but... But you can go fly. Now, if you can't imagine what that does, I mean, if you want to know what engineering's about, real engineering, what real engineers do, what's better than creating a freedom for the human race we didn't have before? The dream of flight, isn't that just the biggest, the best thing? Well, underwater is even cooler because it's just teeming with life. 50% of the eyeballs looking back at you are unknown to science. It just shows different views of this thing. I've got to tell you something that's magical about this. You see the bubbles? There's Fred in the front. There are dual controls. I'm an instructor in the back. I've got controls making sure this sub-commander behaves himself. We have those acrylic bubbles. The acrylic has a refractive index very close to water, so when you look back in, you're very conscious of them. But when you look out, they've gone. I promise you they've gone. You sit in there and you put your finger out, and you don't know when it's just going to fold up. The experience in here is you have a joystick, push it forward, you dive, pull back, you climb, roll right, roll left. Keep rolling, you'll just go all the way over. You have a big harness, dual controls, throttles on the left, rudder bars. If you're a pilot, you would understand that instinctively. And you just go fly with your head out. So, off of Monterey, which is the least interesting place to dive, well, we've tested, I didn't mean that facetiously. It's a great place because of Monterey Canyon. But there's a main town wharf, and we have historically taken the subs I've built down there, racked them in the water just to get them bathed in this corrosive salt water for the first time and see if they work. It's a nasty environment for engineering. The bottom, you sit on the bottom, you know, in a normal sub at 15 feet, there's nothing to see, okay? But you're testing the thing, blow ballast and come back up. In the aviator, we launched inside, navigated out. I had one of the first times I had a reporter in the back. So I said, this is going to be boring as heck. There's just 15 feet of water, nothing to see. We are just flying through the water. The light is glimmering down. There are jellyfish just whizzing by, just mesmerized. And then something caught my peripheral vision. I looked off, and on that right wing was a big, fat sea lion that was just going to go where the hell we were and see where this big blue thing was going. Oh! Both of us yell out a yell because there's this big sea lion, and you just look at that tone. If you were in there, if you saw that, it's only 15 feet, it's only Monterey. Oh, man. It's just incredible. And that's 15 feet of Monterey. We had this in the Bahamas. We've trained 10 of the first pilots for underwater flight school. One of the fun things we can do. We're back where aviation was. There's no federal authority. I am the authority. Pay me enough money, I'll give you a license. I guess I better stop there.
Great, Hawk.
Thank you.